Welcome back to Skills You Need. In this video, I will give you 22 lethal marketing strategies that if you follow, will guarantee you success. The richest companies like Apple and other companies like Nike have incredible success due to these 22 laws of marketing, which I'm going to describe to you in this video. If you want to be in business of any sort, you have to know how to market your product or yourself very well. Using effective marketing, you can anchor the product into the mind of the consumer and essentially turn them into loyal customers. Al-Ries and Jack Trout came together and used the knowledge they gained over the 40 years to write the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, which pretty much breaks down how you can market your product and outbeat all your competitors. And till this day, most, if not all, successful companies use these strategies. It is important that you too know these strategies and read the book if you want to do business of any sort. You can find the book in the description below. Law number 1, Law of Leadership. It's much easier to try to get into the consumer's mind than to try to convince someone you have a better product. Being first in the market is better than having a better product. People usually remember who was the first in any given category, or who the #1 leader is, but don't remember the second. The first company in any category is almost the first brand in the mind of the consumer. For example, we all remember who flew over the Atlantic Ocean or who the first man on the moon was, but almost no one remembers who the second is. However, being first doesn't matter if the product is no good. In other words, being first gives you a really big advantage over your competition, but doesn't necessarily guarantee success. It doesn't matter if you're first in the market if no one needs your product or if your product is of no use. Law number 2, Law of Category. It's hard to gain leadership in a category with a lot of competition, so it's better to create a production of a new category. And this category doesn't have to be radically different. I suggest very similar, just not the same. For example, Budweiser dominated the category of imported beer. Heineken didn't try to compete in that category that already had high competition, but instead they made their own category for themselves in the same field and became the first to import light beer. Or a similar situation in the camera industry. Canon dominated selling the best HD cameras, so GoPro didn't compete with that, instead made another category and became the first sport HD camera. Law number 3, Law of the Mind. It's not as important to be first in the marketplace, but it's very important to be first in the mind of the consumer. So if marketing is a battle of perception and not the product, then the mind takes the lead over the marketplace, right? One way to get mind share is to out-advertise your early competitors. And this is basically the reason behind Tai Lopez's excessive advertisement. This is a super effective marketing tactic. This is basically like marketing on steroids. Law number 4, Law of Perception. There is no objective reality, there is no facts, there is no best product. All that exists in the world of marketing is the perceptions in the mind of the consumer. The 2 biggest Japanese imported cars are Honda and Toyota. Most people believe the fight between these cars is based on reliance, style, horsepower, mileage, and even the price, but in reality it isn't. It's about what the consumers think about Honda and Toyota that makes them a winner. It's the battle of perception. Don't try to create a better product. Try to create a product that is better for a special group of people with a specific problem that's not being solved very well by others. That specific group of people will perceive your product as the best if in fact it's good enough. Law number 5, Law of Focus. The most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the consumer's mind. A company can become incredibly successful if it can find a way to own a word in the mind of the consumer. And not a complicated word or an invented one. The simple words are the ones taken right out of the dictionary. This is the law of focus. You burn your way into the mind of the consumer by narrowing the focus to a single word or concept. Owning this word or concept means that if people hear or see this word, they usually will connect it with a company that owns this word. For example, if I was to tell you search the internet, you automatically think Google. IBM owns computers. FedEx owns overnight. You can't take somebody else's word, you have to make your own, which leads me to the next law. Law number 6, Law of Exclusivity. 2 companies cannot own the same word in the mind of the consumer. When a competitor owns a word or position in the mind of the consumer, it is ineffective to try to own that word or that position as well. For example, Volvo owns the word safety. Many other automotive companies, including Mercedes-Benz and General Motors, have tried to run marketing around safety, yet no one except Volvo has succeeded in getting into the consumer's mind with a safety message. Burger King tried to own the word fast, which was already owned by McDonald's. They failed miserably. FedEx tried to take over worldwide from DHL, and you guessed it, they failed too. You cannot own the same word or position that your competitor owns. You must find your own word to own. I recommend starting out by seeking the best attributes about your product or service, and then just being creative from there. Law number 7, law of ladder. Marketing strategy depends on your position in the market. Number 2 company uses different strategies than number 1 and number 3. For example, Avis was number 2 in car rental, and when they advertised as finest in rent-a-cars, they had losses because their marketing wasn't credible. I mean, you cannot be finest being number 2. They then gained the reputation and turned profit when they switched to Avis is only number 2 in rent-a-cars, so why not go with us? We try harder. Law number 8, law of duality. In the long run, every market becomes a two-horse race. However, both sides are always in perfect equilibrium. Never both sides will happen at the same time, and both will either contrast or alternate. Markets usually give people what they want, which is 2 strong choices. Even as the market gets very mature, it will continue to tolerate the presence of more than 2 players. Some examples of what I mean when I say a two-horse race is Uber and Lyft, Coke and Pepsi, McDonald's and Burger King, Apple and Samsung, Nike and Reebok, Crest and Colgate, just to name a few. So in reality, it's okay if you're in second place. You can still be very successful. You'll just need some adjustment, which leads me to the next law. Law number 9, law of opposite. If you're shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. Leverage the leader's strength into a weakness. Don't try to be better than the leader, try to be different. For example, Pepsi didn't try to compete with Coke, but instead they marketed themselves as choice for the new generation to mirror Coca-Cola's old and established brand. Law number 10, law of division. Over time, a category will split into 2 or more categories. For example, computers started out as a single category, but then broke up into personal computers, laptops, tablets, etc. Cars started out as a single category, but divided into luxury cars, sports cars, RVs, minivans, and so on. Companies often fail to understand that division in new category basically caters to different needs and wants of the consumers. Leaders can maintain dominance by announcing emerging categories with new brand names instead of using brand names already successful in one category in another category. Here's an example of what I mean by that. When Honda wanted to go up in the market and make a luxury car, they created a new brand now known as Acura, instead of messing with their other models that were already super successful in sales. Or Toyota, when they wanted to make a luxury brand, they didn't pimp out their Avalon or Camry. Instead, they made Lexus into its own luxury category and benefited from the sales of that too. This is very important and a very effective law in marketing. Law number 11, law of perception. Marketing takes place over an extended period of time, so it's a mistake to sacrifice long-term planning with actions that improve short-term balance sheet. For example, a sales increase short-term profits, but in the long run, it educates people not to buy for a regular price, therefore decreasing long-term profits. So let's say you're always on sale below what your intentional price really is. It will definitely make you money in a few sales, but when you decide to go back to the original price, people will perceive it as too much because they're used to that lower sales price. So just keep in mind long-term profits over short-term profits. Law number 12, law of line extension. There is an incredible pressure to extend the equality of a brand, and it is a mistake. Instead, one should create a new brand to address new markets or products. Line of extension occurs when a company introduces additional items in the same product category under the same brand name, such as new flavors, forms, colors, and added ingredients. And according to the authors of this book, this is a huge mistake. Law number 3, law of sacrifice. You have to give up something in order to get something. So the law of sacrifice is the opposite of the law of line extension. There are 3 things you need to sacrifice in marketing. Number 1, product line. Number 2, target market. And number 3, consistent change. Let's look at these 3 things in a little more detail. The first is product line. If you want to be successful, you have to reduce your product line, not expand it. Take Emery Air Freight, for example. Emery was in the air freight service. Anything you wanted to be shipped could be shipped via Emery. Small packages, large packages, overnight service, delay service, etc. Number 2 is target market. According to Fortune magazine, Coca-Cola has the world's most powerful trademark. Coca-Cola has outsold Pepsi for years. So what did Pepsi do? They sacrificed everything else and focused on the teenage market only. They hired and paid icons like Michael Jackson and Leon Richie to exploit this market, and it worked. Pepsi closed this gap and their sales were only 10% less than that of Coca-Cola. And the third is change. So many businesses fail because they change what is already working. If a product or service is successful, leave it alone. You can enhance that service or the atmosphere, but do not change the basic philosophy of what made your business or product successful. Law number 14, law of attributes. For every attribute, there is an opposite effective attribute. You can't own the same word as the competition. You have to have another word or another attribute. For example, Coca-Cola was the original and thus the choice of older people. Pepsi successfully positioned themselves as the choice for the younger generation. Or, since Crest owned cavities, other toothpaste companies avoided cavities and jumped on other attributes like taste, whitening, and breath protection. As you can see, marketing is a battle of ideas. So, if you are to succeed, you must have an idea or attribute of your own to focus your efforts around. Without one, you had better have a super low price. For many years, IBM dominated the world of computers with its attribute of big and powerful. Companies like RCA, GE, Univac, Honeywell, NCR tried to move in those attributes but had very little success. Law number 15, law of Candor. Candor is disarming. When you admit a negative, the prospects will give you a positive. So, it's okay. It's okay to admit, as Avis did. Avis is only number 2 in rent-a-cars. One of the most effective ways to get into the mind of the consumer is to admit a negative and then twist it into a positive. Since you can't change the mind once it's made up, focus on using ideas and concepts already instilled in the brain. When a business practices Candor, it gives the consumer a feeling of honesty and truth. And with truth comes trust, and building trust with your prospects is super important. Law number 16, law of singularity. In each situation, only one move will produce substantial results. People tend to think that success is the result of a lot of small efforts well executed. That working hard is a way to success, which is true, but in marketing, the only thing that works is a single, bold strike. Weakness of the opponent is your strength. Try to take the advantage of the opportunity to fill the hole that your competitor has left empty. For example, look at Coke. At present, Coca-Cola is fighting a two-front battle with Classic Coke and New Coke. And while Classic Coke has regained a lot of its original strength, New Coke is barely hanging on. Law number 17, law of predictability. Unless you write your competitor's plan, you can't predict the future. You cannot predict the future, but you can get a handle on trends and take advantage of changes. IBM faced this many years ago when they developed a marketing plan to connect all their personal computers to a mainframe. IBM called this project Office Vision. It was a really great idea, but it wasn't very successful because competitors like Microsoft. IBM developed a really great plan but didn't anticipate the unexpected from the competition. Law number 18, law of focus. Success often leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to failure. For example, GM was very successful in the 70s and continued to lose share through the 90s. And all the time they assumed that they knew what the consumers wanted. Those that think they are market leaders tend to substitute what they think for what the market wants. Oftentimes, successful entrepreneurs get an ego and become less objective. They think that their strategies are best and that no one is better than them. This may be true, but expressing it arrogantly is a dangerous attitude that can lead to financial hardship. You still need to find time to be interactive and be part of your customer's success. Customers need to trust you, and once they do, they will always be your customer. Don't get out of touch with your customers. Stay involved with some of the basic stuff. Your ego should never get too big that you are too good for the little stuff. It's the little stuff that leads to big success. Be confident, don't be arrogant, drop the ego, be objective. Law number 19, law of failure. Failure is to be expected and accepted. Drop things that don't work instead of trying to fix them. Japanese are probably the best with this strategy because they leave their ego at the door and admit early on when a mistake is made and make the appropriate changes to solve that problem. As a result, the Japanese are furious marketers, and we can definitely learn from them. It's been mentioned in many places that Thomas Edison has failed as many as 1,000 times at inventing an electric-powered light bulb. And when asked about his string of failures, he says, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I succeeded at inventing the light bulb, but it took me 1,000 steps to arrive at it." So don't punish yourself or others for failures. If you do, people will stop taking risks. Law number 20, law of hype. The situation is often the opposite of what it appears in the media. The amount of hype isn't proportional to success. Often failed products are heavily hyped. The law of hype means a new concept or situation that was successful in the media often turns out to be a market failure. When things are going well, a company does not need hype. When you do need hype, it usually means you are in trouble. The truth about marketing hype is that it actually works. That's why you see so much of it. I mean, a boring sales presentation won't get very many takers. There has to be excitement. There has to be some type of promise to the listeners. Law 21, Law of Acceleration. Successful programs are not built on fads, but trends. A fad is a wave in the ocean, and a trend is the tide. A fad gets a lot of hype, and a trend gets very little. Like a wave, a fad is visible, but goes up and down in a big hurry. Like a tide, a trend is almost invisible, but it's very powerful over the long term. A fad is a short-term phenomenon that might be profitable, but a fad doesn't last long enough to do a company much good. Law number 22, Law of Resources. Without enough funding, an idea won't get off the ground. You need a lot of money to market your idea. You can have the best idea in the world, but it won't get far without having funds to market it. When developing a new product or concept, you have to be prepared to spend money. If you don't have the money, then you had better thought of a way to get it. If you lack advertisement funds and your competitors do not, then you can be left behind. Competition is furious. Companies like L'Oreal, Ford, GM, American Express, and many other well-known companies spend more than $2 billion a year just on advertising. It takes money to run a business and a successful market to consumers. Some successful entrepreneurs front-load their investment, which means that they don't take profits for a couple of years or however long necessary and put the money back into the marketing fund. Money is a requirement to achieve financial freedom. You have to put in to get profits out. Now, I just wanted to say that you shouldn't let this stop you from making your first move. What I mean is you don't necessarily have to have much money to market a certain product or service. If you don't have the funds, then you can think of other ways. You can check out my other video on how to market your product with very little money. I personally used to build up this channel with pretty much $0 and 0 cents. That sums it up for this video. This video has been the 22 Laws of Marketing by Jack Trout and Al-Ries. If you like this video, then please do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment of which law you think is most effective. If you wish to buy the book, the link is in the bio. And if you want amazing videos that teach you financial freedom and psychological tips and tricks, then go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And until next time, peace.